Hi, welcome to Restoring Tradition. This is Judith Sharpe, president of the In the Spirit of Sharpe Committee, better known as ISOC, a small Catholic apostolate dedicated to pre-Vatican II Catholic social teachings and Catholic action. ISOC was incorporated in 1998, and over the past 27 years, we've organized pilgrimages, conferences, produced some 250 interviews, and continue to sell books you're not likely to find in your local bookstore. Now, today, November 15th, we embark on a new endeavor, podcasting. And for our first episode, we've invited someone well known to ISOC as our first guest, Dr. Peter Chojnowski, Doctor of Philosophy, a man we've interviewed some 27 times since 2007. Some of his topics have included World War I, the Spanish Civil War, distributism, Sister Lucy, Old and New, Thomas Jefferson, Our Lady of La Salette, and many, many others. And all of them can be found at the ISOC www.isoc.ws website. Let me do that one more time. www.isoc.ws. That's the website. Peter, I'm going to say hello.
Hello, Judy. You hear me?
I do. How do you like that interview?
Or something in 1899 or something like that.
Well, how do you like that introduction? Listen, I got to tell you a funny story to start off with, though, because after 17 years and 250 interviews, I'm used to saying, welcome to Catholic Restoration Conference 5. Me saying this time now, restoring tradition has been the biggest challenge of my life. I've had to practice it about 1,000 times because I always want to say the other thing. Yeah. It's just been crazy. But anyway, to get into our conversation, I know I'm going to look here at what the title, because you want to talk about Manly Hall, and I don't know anything about him, and I'm eager to find out what you have to say. But the title you've chosen is Manly Hall's Occult History of the United States. Were FDR and Ronald Reagan listening? So you're on.
All right. Well, Manly Hall, I'm not going to call him an unsung hero of the American experience, but I'll say, because I don't consider him a hero, I find him to be a very negative character. But I can say that he's a man that should be more well known because of his critical role in sort of creating a mythology for the United States and an occult background to the United States that I know has filtered into the American psyche, not on the grand, well, maybe through the media and through academia, into the average man's psyche, the average American psyche, but into the psyches of very prominent Americans like FDR, like Ronald Reagan, even sort of cultural icons like Elvis Presley, and, John Denver, who were very close friends of Manly P. Hall. Can you believe it? Sort of everything. Every character that's sort of uniquely Americana has in the 20th century had some kind of run-in, it seems, with Manly Hall. He was even involved in the Hollywood scene, which was another attempt to create Americana. And I think that's for me why I want to even speak about Manly Hall, who's an enemy of everything I stand for, everything I believe. He's an enemy. He was an enemy of the Catholic Church. He was he deeply hated the civilization that was created by the Catholic Church in Europe and even in America. So, but the reason I think it's important to focus on him is because we've sort of assimilated what he's put out, and you wonder how many men, and we see it in their speeches, and we see it in their actions. For example, FDR, and I'll talk about this as I go along, but FDR was fascinated with Manly Hall, and he actually sent people to the Manly Hall's library of 50,000 occult texts to find out information. Ronald Reagan was a good friend of Manly Hall, and Manly Hall's ideology permeated Ronald Reagan's thoughts, and even George W. Bush cites information that is part and parcel of Manly Hall's mythology of the United States. And I'm going to say, even I've run into in my teaching career, trying to establish curriculum for high schools and lower schools and middle schools. I've run into the Manly Hall mindset, even in so-called Catholic textbooks about American history, where, in a nutshell, all the ancient cultures had one purpose, and that was to set the stage for the American Republic. I've read that. I don't know how many history textbooks from the 1940s and 50s that were produced by Catholic universities. So
Peter, can I ask a question?
Filtered into our whole system, and it's important for us, for me, I know, and for your listeners, to really stand up and analyze it, take it into account, and then think of counter arguments and fight against it. Because if you're a Catholic, Manly Hall hates what you believe. Manly Hall hated the civilization that the Catholic Church built, and he hated the church's influence on Western civilization and indeed on human civilization. So if you're a Catholic, you have to see him as an enemy and someone that you really need to tackle, if you will.
Well, Peter, when you talk about Manly Hall,
yes,
and then you
I
mentioned
should present a biography soon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, when you talk about FDR and Ronald Reagan, all of them were Freemasons. They all belonged to the fraternity, correct?
I don't know about Ronald Reagan. Certainly,
I read
certainly
it was.
certainly FDR, certainly George W. Bush, and Masonry founded the American Republic. There was
right.
They didn't say the traditional Latin Mass when they were laying the cornerstone for the U.S. Capitol or the White House or the Washington Monument. In fact, a group of Masons took the stone that was sent by Pius IX, unfortunately, to be put in the Washington Monument, try to dump it in the Potomac River. So, it wasn't the traditional Latin Mass that founded these American Republican sites. It was Masonry, the rites of Freemasonry. And that's something that we have to understand. We should have understood it 200 years ago. Catholics should have clearly understood it 200 years ago. But now we're alive, we're living, we're talking, we're acting, we're thinking. So we need to think about it now. Well, Manly Hall was part and parcel of that. Let's call it the American dream, which is really nothing but the Masonic dream.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's so important because this is one of the things that people never recognize. They always talk about the separation of church and state and all that other kind of stuff. They don't recognize the fact that America was founded on Masonic principles.
Right. There was no separation between the United States and the Masonic Lodge. There was no separation.
Right.
The separation between Orthodox Christianity and the American Republic. There was an absolute wall, and people, don't accept that, but it is true nonetheless. And this, especially established by Jefferson and James Madison, they were adamant about it. But even all the founding fathers, I mean, for example, Washington wouldn't allow any man to be an officer in his army who wasn't a Freemason. You had to be a member of the Masonic Lodge in order to join up as an officer in the Continental Army. So it was very important. It was.
Wait a minute. You said, I want to hear that again. You said George Washington insisted that everyone, say that again?
Every officer in his Continental Army had to be a Mason.
Because the reason I asked you to repeat
it was a Masonic activity. Yeah, and those are the people he trusted. And I'll give you an example. A Frenchman, the Marquis de Lafayette, who about a year and a half ago, I visited his grave, and it's a shame where he's buried because he's one of the biggest anti-Catholic revolutionaries in European history. And yet he's buried right next to the Carmelite martyrs, of practically right feet away from the Carmelite martyrs who died at the end of the Reign of Terror. He's also buried near all these graves of these noblemen and noble women and noble children who were slaughtered by the Jacobins and their democratic insanity that they foisted on France and later the world. And so, yeah, he's a clear an example of this. He was inducted into a Freemasonic lodge in France before coming over to America at a very young age. I think he was about 18, because he wanted to be an officer with Washington's army. He wanted to sign up, and he knew that unless you were a member of the lodge, you couldn't be an officer in Washington's army. So he was inducted into Freemasonry prior to coming over to the United States, coming over to America, and joining up with Washington.
Well, you know why I asked that is because right now you're hearing all kinds of stories about how great George Washington was and how he had a picture of our Blessed Mother and how, he was something about the rosary. And of course, they're always saying that, he became a Catholic at the end of his life. We've heard that for the last 25 years that people have been saying that some Jesuit was there. And when he came out, Jesuit said it's been done. And that meant that he had converted or whatever. So I'm interested in what you have to say about this in that regard. Freemasonry. He was a Freemason. We can't forget that.
There's no real evidence that he ever converted. The only thing he feared was not the fires of hell, but being buried alive. Apparently, that was his great fear, and put it in his will that he was not to be buried for 3 days. So before, right after he died. But no, there's no real evidence. He was an enemy of the church. Well, he knew that, for example, he had to get rid of some obviously anti-Catholic aspects of, colonial cultural life, like the Pope's Day, burning of the effigy of the Pope on Guy Fawkes Day. He had to get rid of that because he had so many officers coming over from Catholic Europe, France, Germany, Poland. One of my own ancestral cousins, Count Kazimierz Pulaski, he came over from Poland to fight in Washington's army. He was a Mason himself. And so, yeah. He actually fought. He was the only general to die in the Revolution, American Revolution, but he fought under a Masonic flag. So you can find, Solange Hertz writes a lot about this. But So Masonry was very much part of the idea behind Washington. And look at the Masonic monument, which is the Washington Monument.
Right.
Total just expression of this idea pushed by Manly Hall that the ancient Egyptians were really had this universal religion and the secrets of human happiness, which were basically concealed by the priesthood and sort of enculturated into Egyptian life and religion. And the Freemasons say they inherited that Egyptian religion, which is sort of the universal religion of man, the universal religion of human happiness. And they're always pointing to Egypt, and I think that's totally concocted. They knew very little, especially in the 1700s, about ancient Egypt, and yet they made it the source of their new religion. Manly Hall also focuses on it, as he's trying to revive this occult history. And by the way, just to mention where I'm drawing some of this from, I'm drawing it from a book that he wrote called The Secret Destiny of America.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds suspicious right there, right?
Doesn't it?
And guess what? It perfectly lines up with everything that FDR was doing in the 1940s. But the Secret Destiny of America is based on a lecture that Manly Hall gave in 1942 in Carnegie Hall. It was a huge deal, thousands of people. And so he sort of presents this whole history, which is meant to culminate in the post-war era, in which Americans are the chosen race. Sort of the Illuminati of America are the enlightened ones, which guide the American people. And the whole world sort of begins to take on the stamp of the United States. And he also speaks of a world organization that will bring about perfect human fraternity.
There we go.
And that was Franklin Roosevelt's dream. So whether they're both reading from the same sources, or FDR is just lifting it off of Manly Hall, I don't know, but probably he was lifting quite a bit off Manly Hall, because just to speak about FDR, Manly Hall in 1934 established the Philosophical Research Society, and it was in LA, situated in LA, and it involved a collection of all the great esoteric works that he could come in contact with and he could procure. And he brought them to LA, and there were 50,000 volumes of these esoteric works. And after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, FDR sent one of his advisors to the Philosophical Research Society in LA to investigate the destiny of America. What was the destiny of America? What did destiny, world history, the human endeavor expect of America now? And so he went through those esoteric volumes and took some word to FDR. But the very fact that FDR sent someone there to Manly Hall's library is indicative of how much influence Manly Hall had already. He had been on the scene basically for a generation, basically 25 years, more or less. And as this sort of occult prophet. And FDR took him seriously and was a great supporter of that library. So, yeah, it's again looking for the historical destiny of the United States. And what Manly Hall what Manly Hall says in The Secret Destiny of America is that the ancient wisdom embodied and preserved by the Egyptians and continued by the Greeks, passed on by the Greeks, by Solon, the great Greek lawgiver who went into these underground tunnels and saw the inscriptions on these these hidden pillars, and the hidden pillars told him about the proper law for human society, and he brought that knowledge to ancient Athens, and ancient Athens sort of embodied that idea of a perfect society, a perfect government. And then it went down through history. Of course, during the Middle Ages, because they were totally dark and evil, according to Manly Hall, okay, they this knowledge had to go underground. So only the secret societies could preserve this kind of basic human wisdom. And because of the evil persecuting Catholic Church, who would just slaughter you if you walked on the wrong side of the street and burn you alive. That's the typical way that Manly Hall portrays the Catholic Church and Catholic Europe. This everything became more secret. The guilds became more secretive. The knightly orders became more secretive because they were hiding this true human wisdom that was inherited from classical ancient times, which the church wanted to destroy. And that wisdom only began to go public or emerge with men like Sir Francis Bacon, the New Atlantis, his book, The New Atlantis, and the Freemasonic sects of Europe, France, Germany, and England. And but of course, all of this knowledge, all of this wisdom, this movement, this progression of human existence is going to culminate in the United States in the 1940s and after, which is when Manly Hall is speaking. And it's just like a hyper American nationalism. When you actually look at what he's saying, it's just a hyper American nationalism. America and the American idea is the highest idea in human history. And
So,
we're the chosen people, and we live in a utopia, right, Judy?
yeah, well, what I was going to say is it sounds to me like he's a great proponent of the American empire, that's on its way out. But
yeah,
what
because we're meant to enlighten everyone by bringing this idea of democracy. And that's another thing. And he totally made this up. This is totally false. Another lie told by Manly Hall, that the wisdom of the ancient world and the ancient Greeks, for example, they put forward the ideal of democracy. For them, universal world democracy was the ideal, according to Manly Hall, which is exactly wrong, which is totally wrong. Plato hated democracy, as did Aristotle, and as did Socrates. So everything he said about Plato and as being wanting to spread world democracy is totally false.
False. Oh,
Plato thought, and Socrates, that's why Socrates was executed. Socrates was executed by the Athenian state because he continually criticized democracy and upheld monarchy by citing the Iliad, which was Homer's work, which was sort of the, Bible of ancient Greece. So Manly Hall is just lying. He's just distorting human history. He's distorting the classical Greek inheritance. And I don't know. To some degree, you just wonder who he's working for. Is he just a fabulist who's making up stories? Is he an agent of the Masonic lodges in the United States? Or does he work for the U.S. government? I don't know.
he's an agent of Satan.
Did he work for the OSS? Because the works that I'm citing for you or pointing to were from speeches given in 1942 and 1943 in the midst of the war. And I mean, he's singing the U.S. government's tune. So you just wonder who he was. Yeah.
There was no CIA then.
No, but there was the OSS, which was the precursor of it.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah, no, it's this. Yeah, it's so he's claiming that Plato's Republic really is an attempt to visualize world democracy, but in this way, he's just trying to put something over on people because he admits that Plato believed in the philosopher king and the man who was prudent in practical affairs and yet trained theoretically and trained intellectually. And so therefore he was capable of governing the state. And this was the idea. And Plato's Republic, I mean, even Manly Hall has to say Plato wanted a philosopher king and, the creation of philosopher kings. Well, what does this have to do with democracy? It's meant to reject democracy, actually, and put something in its place based on reason, which Plato thought democracy was intrinsically irrational. So, I mean, by saying that, this, sort of so-called American democracy is an attempt to resurrect Plato's Republic or to embody it or to bring it to realization is nonsense, is absolute nonsense. And by the way, America isn't a democracy in the first place, never has been. The presidency is not a democratic office in any way. The Senate is anti-democratic. The Supreme Court is based on the presidency and the Senate, totally anti-democratic. The only democratic aspect of the U.S. government is the House of Representatives, the least powerful of all the branches. So, I mean, America's not even a democracy itself.
Well, I have a question. Yeah. Okay, so you say, I mean, to me, democracy is where the people pick the ones they want to rule. Is that not true? I mean,
well, I would define it as a system in which you have one man, one vote.
Okay.
And you have majority rule.
Okay.
That classically understood, that is a democracy. You can have various forms of republics, like the Venetian Republic was sort of oligarchic and aristocratic, or the Swiss Republic, which is sort of totally decentralized with no president, centralizing authority. But democracy, it rarely, certainly the U.S. Constitution is not democratic.
Okay, so we're supposed to be a republic, right?
Like the papacy involves voting. The Holy Roman, just very few voted. The Holy Roman Empire involved voting, but very few people voted. So in America, you have voting, but it's not a democratic system. For example, living in Washington, the electoral college system, my vote matters much less than the person's vote 2 miles across the border in Idaho. My vote is much diminished as compared to the person voting in Idaho, because they elect 4 electors, and I'm one part of 12 electors, but our populations are such that my contribution to electing, there's more people that contribute to electing one elector in Washington as compared to the people who elect one elector in Idaho. So the average person in Idaho has much more power over who's president of the United States than I do here sitting in Washington now. So, but the important point is, the founding fathers of the United States didn't believe in democracy themselves. That's why they didn't make a democratic system. They didn't make a democratic system.
Yeah, that's why we're supposed to be called.
The Senate was elected by the legislators.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that the only people who can vote, and as far as they knew, the only people who would ever vote, how would they know otherwise, were white men who were property owners.
Yeah.
And to them, that was normal. And that's not democratic. Sorry, it's not democratic.
It sure changed, didn't it?
Neither were the ancient Athenians democratic in our sense of the term. Only 1/10 of their adult population actually voted. Men, you had to be a man. You couldn't be a slave, and you had to be a property owner, and you couldn't be a foreigner. You couldn't be a foreign worker.
There you go. Oh my.
So, well, it's a mythology created by a man who was devoted to mythology. He was committed to the occult reading of history. He was a man committed to the occult reading of human life, and he fit everything into that reading of history and human life, whether it actually fit or not.
Is there any way to know how he came to these ideas in his head? I mean, we're all born and raised with, families and stuff like that. Well, where did they come up with these?
His mother.
His mother.
He was actually, a man who became a fanatical American nationalist, was actually born in Canada, much like, Thomas Paine, this radical revolutionary in 1776, was born in England and was English, just came over later in his life. So too, Manly Hall was born in Canada, Ontario, in 1901. It's hard to figure out what's going on with his family. He never knew his father, but who was a dentist. Sort of strange for an occult leader's father to be a dentist. But his mother, who I guess was separated from his father, his birth mother, moved to Santa Monica, and she was very much involved in the occult and Rosicrucianism. So he learned from when he turned 18. I'm not sure. Maybe he was even younger. When he was a teenager, he left Canada and went to Santa Monica to live with his birth mother and his natural mother, and he learned from her and read her occult texts and her esoteric books that she had, and so she was a Rosicrucian, and he learned from that. That was
What it is about California.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, see, he established again his philosophical research society in L.A., and it's still there to this day. And there's still a president, and who was successor to Manly Hall, who only died in 1990. So he was 89 years old when he died, and he was also very active in the Hollywood scene. He actually wrote scripts for Hollywood movies, and was known by many of the actors and directors of the time. So again, Reagan knew him, Elvis knew him personally, and again, John Denver. I'm trying to think of some other names that were very well acquainted with Manly Hall. But yeah, he was definitely part of the whole California scene.
Amazing. Just amazing. Oh gosh. These guys are something else. You know, Peter, one of the books, I've mentioned this numerous times in our interviews, is that Behind the Lodge Door by Paul Fisher. Do you remember that old book?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's not even in print anymore, which is really too bad. But in the back of the book, he has information about like the ancient civilizations and the, oh gosh, I don't know, that kind of the stuff you were talking about, Manly Hall, and how he got into all that ancient stuff from Phoenicians, or I don't know, wasn't Phoenician.
Yeah. Well, there's something else before I forget. I should mention this. When he went to California, he was about, I'm trying to think of the age. He was about 21 or 22. He met this woman from the Lloyd family who was an oil baroness. She had an oil field in California, and she became his lifelong sponsor. And she gave him oodles and oodles of money, cash, to go around the world and collect these esoteric texts from China and India and all over the world and this is where he put together his library of occult texts. So, she sponsored him and throughout her life, and then ended up giving part of her oil fields to him. And I don't know the connection there exactly, but she was obviously his patron. And
excuse me, I got to interject.
Go ahead.
It reminds me of Eve, and then it reminds me of Ailson, and all these women who are so many times behind some of these men, either with women or whatever else. And it's just like we have an evil touch on us that we can't get rid of.
Yeah.
Oh,
there must have been some kind of fascination with the occult on her part, and because he saw, and this was even in the early 20s. So he was like 20 years old, 22. He was putting together works which said they combined like Rosicrucianism, Kabbalism, Freemasonry, all these occult arts, and putting together, for example, the images connected, making books that reproduce the images that were present and the symbols that were present in all these kinds of occult societies, and talking about the meanings of these symbols. And so he was really prolific, but his ultimate statement to the world was that there was one hidden wisdom that ran through all of these occult arts. And I think, strangely enough, he ends up saying it was the democratic ideal that runs through all these hidden arts, and that this democratic ideal was becoming embodied in the United States in the 1940s, and it was ready to explode onto the world scene. And but this was and basically creating a utopia, as he says, existed in the old Atlantis before it was destroyed. And he's one of those who focuses on this Atlantis idea, that there was a set of islands in the Western Sea, that these 10 kingdoms ruled by 10 kings. So even, the embodiment of the source of world democracy didn't have democracy itself. It had 10 kings, and the 10 kings together ruled over this really paradisical world where there was no war, no suffering, no disease. And it was only when they went to war with each other that Poseidon, who was the father of all these 10 kings, again, this pagan origin, destroyed them by inundating this world and destroying, Atlantis. And again, this idea that Manly Hall cultivates and says that, well, the great thinkers of Europe held this idea, was that there was going to be a new Atlantis to the west, and it would be this utopian place, the fulfillment of human dreams. And of course, he identifies the new Atlantis with America. So, this idea of the new Atlantis is very much a part of his thinking.
I don't see this as a paradise.
No, I mean, you can love your country, you can appreciate everything around you, the food, the people, the way of life, but it's not a paradise. And to say that, and to even think that it could even come close to a paradise, really is a fundamental rejection of Christianity.
Yeah.
Which is fine for someone like Manly Hall, who was never a Christian. Well, at the age of 19, he was like the pastor of a church in California. And I can't remember the name.
One of those.
I don't know. Church of the Holy Rose. I don't know. Something. It was something, Church of the Good Hope or something like that.
Yeah.
He was permanent pastor at the age of 19. So maybe he dabbled initially in some form of Christianity, but surely
not the Christianity we know.
No, not the Christianity we know, nothing Orthodox. He saw that as an enemy. So,
well, Peter, I did read a couple of other things about him that I'll throw out. One of them is that he believed in reincarnation.
Did he? Yeah. I never ran into that.
I got into that. And then the other thing is, and I think I mentioned this to you, that he said there was an angel present at the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
I wonder what angel that was. That's scary.
Yeah, get me. I got to tell you this before I forget about it, because there's several. But yeah, he said there was like the founders or the men meeting for the, in convention, the Second Continental Congress. They were debating, hesitating. Should we go this far? It seems a bit too radical. This declaration written by Jefferson. And but then this voice came from somewhere and told them, no, this is the great moment. This is the culmination of human history, basically. And that, you have to be courageous and sign. And so that, John Hancock ran up to sign it first, and then everyone ran up quickly to sign it. And then they looked back to see where the voice had come from, and there was no one there.
Ah,
So, of course, again, this idea that there was an angel. And there's even more. There's even more, because in the book that I'm speaking of, The Secret Destiny of America, he says that there was always this idea of the golden fleece, like this sort of like this skin, that parchment that was to be found in the West. And they always, all the great adventurers and thinkers, they were searching after the golden fleece, this document that would bring man close to immortality,
oh boy.
perfection. And Manly Hall identifies the golden fleece with the Declaration of Independence.
Of course.
Because it was written on, parchment. And so, yeah, the Declaration, when you read about what he said about the Declaration, it's like a sacred document. And so that he says, the whole signing of the Declaration was a sacred event and prompted by angels is not surprising. He says the same thing about the creation of the Stars and Stripes, the U.S. flag, which he says that Washington and Jefferson and Franklin were trying to think about what the design should be. And then some man staying with Franklin called the Professor, who hardly ever spoke and was sort of a recluse. They came upon him, and he came out to them and told them exactly how the flag should be designed. And, then he sort of disappears into history, and he's sort of this mysterious figure. Either Manly Hall is talking about an angel, or Manly Hall's talking about this, a member of this Order of the Quest. He says throughout history, there's these individuals who are part of this Order of the Quest. And they are the illumined ones. They are the ones who really know. They are the ones whose rule will bring about the fulfillment of the ages. So, but in all these various instances, going back even to the Mayflower, and the creation of the flag, and to the Declaration of Independence, there was all these mystical figures that would appear at just the right moment and give the design for something, whether it's the Declaration and that it should be signed, or the flag, or establishing peace between the Puritans and the strangers, from the Mayflower. It was always this divine intervention of some type, mystical individuals who came forward just to advance human destiny. So, and he even says that Nostradamus predicted a nation which would be sort of the new Atlantis, which would have a holiday on Thursday. And that holiday would celebrate, amongst other things, religious liberty and, equality. And
so what is that? July 4th? Are you thinking?
No, Thanksgiving.
Not Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Oh my.
Yeah. So Nostradamus predicted the celebration of Thanksgiving, which is always on Thursday. And
I mean, that doesn't
Yeah,
make
no,
sense.
he says Notre Dame foresaw the United States, and you know how this holiday would be the expression of all these high human ideals.
Well, Peter, you and I are strongly believers in Satan. And I mean, through the centuries, we know that he's been very powerful. And you can just see him behind so many things, with his agents. I mean, oh my goodness, it's just fascinating. I mean, I see, I just see Satan at work behind this guy. I mean, obviously he's anti everything that has to do with the true God.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, he sees that as exactly what is to be overcome. And of course, he uses the words world democracy, but reading what he writes, it's clear he doesn't mean sort of one man, one vote, majority rule. He sort of means the American way, the American idea. And when he really says the American idea, he's really saying the Masonic idea.
Yeah.
And when he's saying the Masonic idea, he's saying the idea of the very few, the illumined.
Now,
So, you can talk about all this universal democracy, but actually, he seems to be speaking of a world order run by the few illumined in the United States. That's what he seems to be speaking of. And I think that's where it really was going.
What do you think his influence has been on our country, or men?
I think it's been very profound. I mean, as I mentioned, he was even involved in the creation of Hollywood movies. He was a screenwriter. He was so well known in 1941, again, that FDR actually sent someone to his philosophical research society to just find out what the destiny of America is.
Oh my
day. So that's a pretty critical moment in human history, after December 7, 1941. Again, Ronald Reagan's if you look at Ronald Reagan's themes, America, I can't remember the quote. Basically, America helps man out of the mud. It's one step in, it's one critical step in mankind pulling itself out of the mud.
Right. City on a hill.
Yeah, the city on the hill. And even when George W. Bush spoke during his whole war on terror and this neocon idea of making the world into the image of the United States, and the U.S. being the policeman of the world, he uses language that almost comes directly from Manly Hall, where he speaks of 2,500 years struggle of these ideas to emerge, and they are only emerging in our time in the Americas spreading itself throughout the world and confronting the evil regimes. And it's amazing because he uses sort of the timeline of Manly Hall. So this is part and parcel. And again, all the people he knew and all the people he seemed to have influenced, all the big figures of what I'll call Americana. It shows you his influence, and it shows you sort of the occult background of a lot of these ideas.
But it really is all a movement toward that one world order. With now, his idea is that with America being the one to rule it.
Yeah, well, yeah, seemingly, or the United Nations, or the United Nations. That's also. But remember, this even has these ideas have even influenced and infiltrated the Catholic Church. I mentioned one name, Jacques Maritain. He should be well known to your listeners. Jacques Maritain, if you read his book, I can't remember its name, Democracy, America. It's not America, but it's something about world democracy. Jacques Maritain wanted a one world government of universal democracy. And basically, he points to the United States as the model for this world government. And this is Jacques Maritain, who was probably the major influence on Paul VI and, Dignitatis Humanae and so much of what went on at Vatican II. But yeah, this idea of world democracy, when you read it, it's so bizarre because when you read Jacques Maritain's book, because it seems so far-fetched, so utopian, and yet he really believed it. And he really pushed it into the heart of the church. It was to be the substitute for Christendom. This was his substitute for Christendom. And it very much involved the separation of church and state, which is something Manly Hall absolutely demanded.
Embraced, yeah.
And the church was just, all it asked for was freedom to be. That's all it asked from the world. That's all it asked from, mankind, and the state, just freedom to be itself. And
the Catholic Church.
Yeah. And nothing else. It made no other claims on the state. So how is this utopian vision of Jacques Maritain different than Manly Hall's vision, or Woodrow Wilson's vision, or Franklin D. Roosevelt's vision, or Ronald Reagan's vision, for that matter,
or wherever we are today? I don't know what was who's in the White House has a vision.
You think we've actually gotten beyond this? I don't think so. We hear the same thing. We've never really gotten over this, this schema of world history and how to view it. And we've never sort of ejected it from our consciousness. So we still live it. And, now we're going to make Venezuela, Nigeria, all these, Ukraine, give them the image of America and make, all these places safe for democracy.
Wow.
And don't you think, that the motivating idea is what you see in Manly Hall?
Yeah. Well, with the United States, the power behind everything, or, you said the United Nations, but I just see it the United States.
Now it's the United States.
Like you said,
Manly Hall was just sort of hooking on to an idea probably well known and in the mind of Franklin Roosevelt, which was to rule this universal democracy of mankind, basically taking its lead from the United States, but being ruled through the United Nations. And he was just articulating the ideas of the U.S. government in the 40s. And whether they influenced him or he influenced them, I don't know.
Well, who knows what's coming next? At least he's gone.
Yeah, at least he's gone. And can I just tell you about we don't know if he was murdered or whether he died at the age of 89 in peace in California. His wife said that he was murdered by the people who worked for him at the Philosophical Research Institute. or and by his son supposedly was involved also, but his wife insists that he was murdered. The general story was that he just died of a heart attack, but so there's a mystery as to the death of Manly Hall.
And who would want to get rid of him?
Yeah, I know.
And for what reason? Well,
Yeah,
those mysteries.
if you hadn't gotten rid of him yet, but I think there was money involved. There was, control of that philosophical research society. So
yeah, you hear about that all the time. That whatever that society is that he was involved with, Blessy or whatever her name was. They're all in the background. I don't know. Oh gosh, it's really it's the evil that's plaguing us, and we're stuck with it for now. We have to just keep the faith and don't give in to anything. Just stay faithful and stick with Our Lady and
don't dabble in the occult.
No, please don't.
Don't dabble in the occult.
No, please don't.
There,
Don't use the Ouija board.
Yeah, he always portrayed occult knowledge as bright and the hope for mankind, but there's a deep darkness that
very dark.
I'm
very
sure you're aware of. Yeah.
Scary. Well, I don't know, Peter. What do you think? This has been kind of interesting. Different, huh?
It's a different topic, but it's in the background of a lot of stories that we run into, both in the United States and throughout the world. And we've known it. I mean, people in the traditionalist movement have known it for a long time. I mean, when I first sort of wandered into traditional circles, one person asked me, I just coming up to them at a picnic or something, which part of the conspiracy are you involved? Are you, involved in or, interested in? Or it's like, oh, okay. But we've known that there's been these forces behind the scenes, whether it's Masonry, whether it's the Zionist, ideology, and the Jewish financial powers. We've known that these people are behind the scenes and trying to basically take down Christian civilization.
Yeah.
And build something different according to a different model, a dark model. And we've known this all along. It's just interesting to see that it's actually true, that there's actually a real occult. Manly Hall is a manifestation that you can be totally immersed in the occult and yet be very popular in LA and Washington, D.C., and New York.
That tells you a lot.
Yeah. It's almost not in the same way, of course, but this Jeffrey Epstein situation.
Yeah.
It's not just, he was trafficking, of course, but he was also influential in finance, in sort of geopolitics, in blackmailing of, high level individuals. And he was connected to so many people and so in the elite. And I think Manly Hall is similar in that he was connected. He knew everybody. He had something to convey to everyone, and they all wanted to be with him, just like everyone wanted to be with Epstein.
Yeah, that's a good
really, no, former Prince Andrew and wife Sarah Ferguson and Trump and on and on, scientists and what's the man in charge of Microsoft? I can't even think of his name. Bill Gates
and Dershowitz,
Bill Clinton, and all
remember Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz said, "Well, I didn't take my underwear off." You remember that?
Yeah,
Oh
Alan
my
Jones. I mean,
gosh. What
everybody,
creeps.
all these
Those
people,
creeps.
and I think I think Manly Hall was very similar. He knew
Yeah,
everybody,
sure.
and he was connected, and he was providing some service, which all, as far as I know, was just intellectual, but
Yeah.
um, it was sort of the same thing. And the only question is, how did Manly Hall, this refugee from Canada, I guess, um, and a cult nerd, a cult book nerd, sort of become this hugely influential character
Yeah.
on the American scene?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know. It's important to expose all these things, Peter. This is what we
Absolutely.
do. We expose a lot of this stuff that maybe people haven't thought about before. Certainly I
Right,
have,
right.
and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, but
So
well, I can commend you for your first
I was probably a mess.
went well, and it's great to get the message of ISOC out there, and I hope your venture is very successful. And
Well,
have
we
me on
tried.
again.
I'm sorry.
Have me on again.
I would be happy to pick the time. Let's put
Yeah.
you up. Yes, you're always in our lineup of speakers. But yeah, it's really interesting. This has been an enormous challenge for me because I don't know how to work all these little maneuvers, and I know my grandson has been helping. But I just thank you for being the guinea pig. I mean,
Okay.
you have been you are the one who started us off in this, and you were very brave. I commend you for your courage.
Okay. Great. Thank
and
you.
I thank you very much. And Peter, we always have the same old sign off. I don't know if you remember what it is, but I have to find now where to push the buttons here to end the stream and play our ending. So I'm going to say Notre Dame de Chartres.
Pray for
Pray
us.
for us.
Regina Caeli, laetare, alleluia, quia quemeruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit, sicut dixit, alleluia, ora pro